Hello, everybody. Thank you for being patient, and also thank you for signing up to what is to be the first edition of Samagama Talks. I am Arjit. I'm signing in today from Bidar, Karnataka, where I also work and live now. Um, my background is in graphic design, but my practice currently involves a lot of learning and making with artisanal and crafts communities across the Deccan bioregion. And yeah, this is come like a larger part of my practice. And today we also have with us Karen, Nate, and Steve from Island Soundscape Project, and of course Ishita. Both myself and Ishita will be moderating this conversation. And we are fellows who affiliated to the School for Sensitive Ecologies within the Living Labs Institute. And the Living Labs Institute has 5 such schools for concentrations. Um, to speak a little bit about the institute itself, it is a sort of a convergence of our network's decade-long engagements and actions, which were oriented towards learning with the places we were in. And as a network, we've been situated in Kalyan, Karnataka since 2016, and more recently in Channapatna, coastal Karnataka, and Chennai as well. And in retrospect, for us, one of the realizations have been that our actions and engagements have been guided by the knowledge that is produced by people living in a place over many generations. So the larger intent of the Living Labs Institute is to foster more of such place-based and practice-based learning collaborations. So that was about the Living Labs Institute. And now, without further ado, I will ask Ishita to introduce herself, the ISP, and she will also walk us through how today's session will unfold. Yeah.
Yeah, so just a quick introduction. I'm Ishita, and I'm an artist and also a grad student at the University of Maine, which is where I'm currently logged in from. And like to introduce the Island Soundscape Project. I've been working, I've had the opportunity to work with them over the summer and get to know their work. Uh, it's the Island Soundscape Project is a main based art research collaborative, and through their work, they're sort of making the proposition that through listening, how do we better understand the world that we inhabit? Um, they partner with local institutions, cultural, ecological institutions, and to promote the idea of the soundscape as an element in the understanding of preservation and identity of various communities of Maine's coastal regions. Um, I just want to hand it over to Karen, Nate, and Steve to also just give us a little introduction about yourselves.
Let's go in that order.
Okay, that puts me first. Hi, everybody. I'm Karen. I am a associate professor at the University of Maine at Machias, which is a small regional campus of the University of Maine. And I teach in the area of outdoor recreation and tourism management. And I became involved with the Island Soundscape Project a couple years ago, maybe 3-4 years ago now. After doing and being involved in some research regarding visitor experiences with soundscapes in protected areas in Chilean Patagonia. And now I'm turning my attention to working on where I live, which is right near the coast of Maine in the Down East region. It's like as far east as you can get without being in the ocean off of the United States. So thanks for being here.
Yes.
Was it Karen, Nate, and Steve, or Karen, Steve, and Nate? It was Karen, Nate, and Steve. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Nate Aldrich. I'm one of the founders of the Island Soundscape Project, along with Steve Norton, who I don't know how you're oriented, but is over there somewhere. I am a faculty member at the University of Maine. I teach in the graduate program that Ishita is currently enrolled in. I've been there for over 20 years. And the Island Soundscape Project is sort of a culmination of a lot of my past. I have a history in theater, I have a history in music, and I have a history in interactive art, installation art. And how those things all converge into the Island Soundscape project is the same mystery that alchemy provides for those who care about it. We've been, Steve will tell you this, we founded our first sort of iteration of the Island Soundscape Project just around the COVID times. And since then, we have sort of, our mission statement has remained the same in philosophy, but in practicality, it has sort of migrated. And right now we work with land trusts in the state of Maine, particularly, and try to imagine how soundscape studies can be a more integral part of land conservation.
Hi there. Thanks to everyone for coming. I'm Steve Norton. I am the other co-founder of the Island Soundscape Project, along with Nate. And similarly, I have a music background, and I spent many years working in the corporate world while also playing music. And then in 2016, I quit all of that and came up to the University of Maine to study in the Intermediate Art MFA program. And starting somewhat before that, but certainly accelerating through my time in the school, I shifted to a point here where I'm now really not playing at all, and I'm entirely focused on field recording, soundscape composition, and installation. Yeah, Nate is right. I think it was 2020 we did our first soundscape project together, and then it picked up a bit in late 2021 when we got a grant to do a project, and then that will feed right into the rest of what we're going to talk about today.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. And also thank you for taking the time out to come and speak to us today. Just a quick, before we proceed, since we've had to change the format a little bit, we won't be sharing any audio via the call, but I'm going to just send a link for an excerpt from one of their soundscape compositions called the Cranberry Isle Soundscape. And maybe we can just take a minute to go listen, although it's...
Click on it and listen to it locally.
Yes.
Got
Yes.
it. Yep.
I'm going to hope that most people have had the chance to listen to that. And I know that, some of us have had the chance to sort of look at your work. So I'm just going to ask some questions around that particular piece. So also just from my, one of the things that I guess, let me just, let you sort of talk about Cranberry Isle Soundscape first, and then I can ask some specific questions about that. But what was the project about, and how did that happen? Steve, I think you're on mute.
Huh. When did I do that? I don't remember. Yeah, I can take that one. That was what I was alluding to when I said in late 2021, we actually got a grant to do this piece. Prior to that, we had spoken with the president of the Great Cranberry Island Historical Society, and suggested that we could provide something like this to them. They have the Historical Society is on the Great Cranberry Island, which is one of the 5 islands of the Cranberry Isles, which is those are just off the coast of Maine. And they have a little museum, and we suggested that we could make a piece like this and they could have it up in their museum. So then we went and managed to get funding, and then the following summer, we took trips out to each of the 5 islands, and we brought anywhere between 1 and 3 student assistants with us. We had a couple of grad students and a recently graduated undergrad, and first we basically gave them instruction in field recording, and then we did a little practice locally before going out to the islands. But then we went out and gathered a lot of material. It was we would go out, we'd be out there for about 4 hours, take the ferry back, and come home with quite a bit of material. Over the following winter and spring, Nate and I assembled that into a 4-channel composition, which the following May, we went out and installed 2 speakers, a pair of media players, and an amplifier in this small museum, and it's part of their permanent collection. And they're open only basically during the warm months, and it is it's constantly playing in their space the whole time, and they seem to enjoy it a lot. We've visited them each subsequent year, and the feedback is always very, very positive.
So that's sort of the nuts and bolts of it. I can address perhaps some of the founding ideas of our organization, and how they apply. One of our goals was to work with local institutions, small institutions, which doesn't mean we're not invested in larger institutions as well, but local historical societies, again, land trusts, and many of the land trusts in Maine where we are quite small. Karen and Steve are both on the boards of land trusts, and they can tell you that their budgets are practically nothing. So one of the things we try to do is go out and figure out how we identify funding that we can then transfer to these other locations. So we got to offer this to the Historical Society for free. We and sort of at the same time offer graduate students an opportunity to engage in this field that they might ordinarily not engage. So we sort of killing a bunch of birds with a single stone, except for the violence of the metaphor. I apologize. So that's kind of how we've then proceeded, which is trying to identify funding. And we've found that some of the people that we've approached have been extremely generous, especially considering how little they understand when we first talk to them what we're talking about. And then the last thing I'll say about that, and then perhaps Steve and Karen want to talk about how resources in places like land trusts are difficult to come by, especially for projects like this. But we also, and Ashita knows this from her academic work, we're trying to institute an understanding of artistic research, which is a very, very new field. And it's rather controversial. Some institutions claim that artists aren't researchers. That's why they're artists. So there is this, bifurcation of the institutes of scientific understanding and artistic understanding, and we're trying to pull them together by, in our case, it's not the only way to do it, by making artworks that are predicated on research and thinking about data as things like field recordings. So to us, that's the data that we work with. And the idea is that we can organize them and present them publicly and have them as meaningful and as representational and as informative and educational as almost any other scientific endeavor. Whether that's true or not, please don't tell us, because we're going to stick to that.
This reminds me of the other question that I have been having since I've listened to these recordings earlier as well. So someone like me, a listener like me, who listens to these soundscapes in a very different context, the process of meaning making is very, very different. How I identify or relate to these sounds are very, very different to how a person in the place relates to. So what are some of the perspectives on that as a process? And what are also the scopes or limitations of sound as a medium for meaning making?
Steve or Karen, do you want to take that?
Well, I'll hop in with a thought that I had, and I don't know if it's going to answer your question or not, but part of the work that we've been doing with the Land Trust has been in an effort to reach more people and help people connect with place, right? And so obviously there's the recordings, and a person who's been there can then utilize those recordings to reconnect with sense of place. That's my own thoughts, and like, I haven't studied this scientifically or anything, but it's like sounds, as we know from research with like patients with Alzheimer's and so on, like it has strong memory connections. And so hearing the sounds of a place can help bring you back to maybe that moment in time that you were there, or like, you know, a place that you used to live in that you moved away from. And so part of the idea was to help provide another avenue for people to connect with the place. In terms of connecting with a place that you haven't been to and you're listening to the sounds of, I don't know how to broach that one. I'm going to throw that one right over to Steve.
who may also not really have a good answer for that. What I was thinking about saying, at least in terms of this piece, and this actually does not address that specific question, but we actually that the Cranberry Isles soundscape in general is full of sounds that that local people actually told us about and said, oh, you know, if you want to do this, you should definitely be sure that you get this sound or that sound, or, you know, there's the bellboys and there's a creaking dock, and maybe you can get the hermit thrush that's up on this, up on this hill. And so we actually got input from the community. And so that was an important part, particularly for that piece of making it. Clearly, if you put this up on Bandcamp and people from all over the world can listen to it, that's a very different experience. But so it's not, in that case, it's not about place-based knowledge. It's more of I would think an aesthetic experience. And either it's something, I guess, that will hit a chord with somebody or not. But right, because I mean, if we're going to talk specifically about place-based knowledge, this is an example of a piece that was made using place-based knowledge, essentially.
And I don't mind adding to that. The idea of meaning making and art making is an interesting process. And it's one of the things that I do focus on in my teaching at the graduate program. I think art makes meaning in different ways than science makes meaning. And what that meaning is mediated by the observer, whereas in science, the meaning is intended to be absolute, or the truth, right? That's the goal of science, is to seek truth in the betterment of us all. And I think art is to seek understanding in a slightly more abstract way for the betterment of us all. So to distribute something that's place-based to places that it isn't is that process of tossing things into the world and hoping they have a resonance.
Right.
And you may find that's true, or you may not find that's true. But I mean, again, this is an experimental practice. We're not saying this is this. We're saying, check this out.
Right.
Here is this.
Yeah, I also wanted to sort of, one of the things that I was thinking about, if I was to offer sort of a visual imagination or the visual point of view of the main landscape, when you see pictures, you see something that's really calm and serene and it's just really idyllic. But of course, like there's when you hear the soundscapes through your work, I feel like there are sometimes unexpected revelations, and one of them being the sounds of people, the sounds of boats, and the sounds of human activity. So I was also just curious to know a little bit more about how do you think about that when you're out there in the field making recordings?
Specifically in this case, we offered them a soundscape that was reflective of the place that that they live, and so we did not make aesthetic judgments about the sounds that we had gathered. We took other than is there unwanted noise like handling noise, or people crashing into into tripods and making that kind of mechanical sound. As long as the sound was free of that, we left everything in. And if you did get a chance to hear that excerpt, you'll hear motors and people talking, as well as these incredible song sparrows and bell buoys. And so there's like all the things. So you get the idyllic, but you also get the human sounds, because the place is not devoid of human sounds. And so in terms of a truth statement, we're looking to be more accurate than less in terms of what does a certain place sound like.
And I'll turn this over to Karen because I think she can speak to this as effectively as anyone I know. But what's controversial we're finding right now in 2025 is that very question, right? What's the role of human activity in the soundscape? What's the role of the Island Soundscape Project in suggesting that there are ways to understand it and maybe even think of preservation in the sonic realm as well as preservation in the visual realm? So Karen's undertaken a year plus long study in this, and if you want to speak to that, Karen, that'd be great.
Sure, but what's the actual question?
Well, the controversial nature that we discovered.
Okay. Yeah. So
Maine Coast Heritage Trust, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I think I can sort of ground this in two different philosophies that are part of my background in recreation and tourism management and protected area management. And on the one hand, there's the idea of conservation, and the other hand, there's the idea of preservation, right? And so sometimes we see the two somewhat competing philosophies. Like the preservation, is it meant to be a place that's quote unquote untouched by humans, right? Or conservation, is it meant to be more like we are part of the ecosystem in which we live, and what's our role in that? And then, you can get at various things like, are we on the top or are we more egocentric? But what we found is even within, so we essentially did interviews with staff, a whole bunch of staff with this group, this land trust group, who's a statewide organization, to ask them how they thought of, sounds in their work. And they are a conservation organization, and some of their philosophies are to preserve land, for habitat and human health and all those things. And so for some of the people, like, human sounds are meant to be there. And even if they're motorized, they're just part of the grander scheme of things and the life that we live in at this point in time in our cultural evolution, I guess would be a way to put it. And for others, the idea of those, especially motorized sounds, being impinging on the greater scope of what they're trying to accomplish. Like, they can get in the way of a healthy ecosystem. And so there, even within this one organization whose purview is to conserve land, it's the same kind of, like, are we preserving it for people, or are we preserving it for the wildlife, or how can we reconcile both conserving it for the people and the wildlife? And sound obviously plays a huge role, because you can look and not hear something, right? Or you can like not see it. What you can look at a landscape and you can hear stuff coming from way away from where its origin is, and it can enter those preserved lands in a way that other things can't, right? I don't know if that.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of the idea of pollution, right? How pollution can happen in a factory 100 miles away and then still affect people who have nothing to do with that region, or have nothing to do with that economy, or all of that stuff. I do have a quick anecdote, though, that I think is germane to what you were just saying. One of the projects we're just embarking on now is making these little 90-second snippets for public radio and public archives for the state of Maine. And we had a meeting yesterday, and the person that we're working with sort of to steward this process had a comment about one of the demos that we submitted. And it was about the working waterfront in this town that's just over the bridge from me, that is one of the largest lobster landing points in the United States and has been traditionally for decades. And so we had this little snippet of the waterfront. And she said, well, you know, I couldn't hear any boats or waves or anything. I wonder if you could find a different spot in that recording that, you know, sounded more like the waterfront. And we're like, well, the waterfront sounds like an industrial park because it's an industrial park, you know? And so it was really interesting that, and I think this speaks to what Karen's talking about, is how we engage with our ears and say, well, that's not what I imagine. And it's like, well, but that's what it is, as Steve Norton is prone to say.
Yeah, we put up the mics, hit record, and just let it go, and that's what we got. And what you get is what it is.
Yeah, and I was also just curious that there's a lot of, so part of the work in is about sharing these soundscapes with the public through these installations. And you're just going back to this idea of where you're sort of talking about listening in the realm of conservation. How has the public sort of received this idea through your work? What have you noticed?
It's I find that when we present, often we'll be playing a lot of different sound clips, which include, you know, boats or, you know, or wind or animals, and people are always really fascinated by it all. It's the responses are generally really positive. I'm super interested to see what happens with this radio project, because now we're getting a chance to sort of really, you know, to literally broadcast it, and I'm sure that the Maine Public Radio folks will be getting feedback on that, and I'm really interested to hear how that goes, because generally it's really quite positive.
And Ishita, I do want to say that the exposition of our work sort of is threefold, right? We make artworks or sound installations. We give a lot of presentations. Steve is now cataloging those for one of our funders, right? And as it spills onto the second page, you know, we're like, oh dear, we've been talking a lot. And then there's documentation and you know, more sociological research, which is mostly spearheaded by Karen and some of her students. So I think there are different responses.
Yes, certainly.
Depending on what we're doing, but I think in general the response has been very positive. But also, you know, this is not this is documentation in a different way, and so differences, one tends to stand away from difference until it stops being different.
I can comment really briefly. I just, as part of the work that we're doing, I did a sound walk series in the Down East region of Maine. So I had 3 different guided hikes where we invited visitors to come and really do a focus on listening. Instead of having one of those hikes where everyone's talking, you know, we were quiet, and I would stop at certain points and we would just listen. And the feedback that I got from the people who participated in that was just really, really positive. And so, you know, that's something that I'm considering, you know, as another another avenue to try and reach people, you know, in addition to things like the installations, but also having more of these guided experiences to help people connect. And we've tuned out as a society, we've kind of tuned out, like people are hiking with their ear pods in, and, you know, so trying to just get people to refocus on the art of listening through these walks and these guided experiences. And yeah, so far that's really been positive. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback.
I just want to, open it up to the audience as well. If there are any questions that people have, please feel free to either drop them in the chat or just turn on your mics.
In the meantime, is there any way we can listen to the sound marks piece? I'm not sure if it's published online somewhere.
It's not, but I just now, while I was looking at the Ishita sent us potential questions, so I was just breezing down that. It occurred to me that we could go back to the Bandcamp page and listen to a piece that actually has sound marks in the title. Let's see, where's the there we go.
Right, I found that. Yeah.
You found it? You want to
Yeah.
post it? Okay, 'cause I just got it. Yeah. Because I think this is a really interesting example of sort of many aspects of our work.
So we're going to take a quick pause while people listen to that.
Quick
Sure.
pause to listen to this. Yeah, it's 5 minutes. We could, you know, stop after 3.
Yeah, so we have a question. Cool. And Steve has responded, but I think that is a great question. And yeah, there was so before you suggested this particular piece, Steve, I was actually going to post the bridge song because these are also fascinating sounds that are possible to sort of, we're able to hear them because of the equipment that you use. And yeah, if you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Yes, we use for the most part small, uh, uh, very sensitive condenser mics to do our soundscape recording, and we record to recorders that are as quiet as as we can afford. Um, uh, but also we use contact microphones to pick up things like the piece that Ishida was talking about, which is up on our Bandcamp page as well, Bridge Song. That's those are particular kinds of contact microphones that are optimized for low end, and they pick up this crazy deep bass sounds from the metal girders of a bridge. We use contact microphones also to gather the sounds of tiny insects that are vibrating on plants. They communicate via vibration. We use hydrophones in the water, and we've gotten all sorts of really interesting sounds from them, like dolphins and fish.
And things we can't identify.
And yes, and who knows what on the Bandcamp page there's the anomalous sound, which nobody seems to know what it is. So yeah, so using a broad range of input devices is important to our work.
So why the boot head clip, Steve? What's going on there?
So as we were early on in the process of doing what we were calling acoustic evaluations of Maine Coast Heritage Trust preserves, which is part of the project that we undertook with them, Karen and I visited this preserve, which is just gorgeous, and we were the photograph that's on the track page there, the Bandcamp page. It's basically the perspective from which we were sitting on this. There's a bench there. We had been hiking for a while, and we were just sitting on this bench, and then all of a sudden we were like, "What's that sound?" And we heard that very rhythmic kind of woof, 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 woof sound. And so after a lot of investigation, we discovered that there's a rock formation down there. It's actually visible sort of in the photograph. It's in the lower left, and it's these dark rocks. And if you're watching them while that sound is happening, you see that there's jets of mist coming out of a couple of apertures. So my presumption, and I don't know this for certain because I haven't been down there, but is that there's some kind of crevice in the rocks, and at certain points in the sea height, waves come into that crevice, and once there's waves, there's got to be some kind of area inside there, volume inside there that there's a harmonic. It has the wave action responds in a harmonic fashion, and you get this rhythmic whooshing sound, and it. This recording is from a recording that we sent the recorders out and left them overnight, so that we had like 2 complete tide cycles in that recording, and then went through and listened and basically mapped out the relationship of that sound to the high and low tide marks, and and it happens in a very consistent sort of way. It's not going all day long. It's only going for about 3 hours. But this was, this is just one of the outcomes of our research, while just going to this preserve with not really an idea of what we might find, and we also, during that process, we take sound pressure level meter readings, and we generally take a sample from a certain point in the park, and sort of use that as kind of our baseline for, what kind of, is this a very quiet place? Is it a typically loud place? What kind of sounds are here? And of course, in this particular case, we found this, unique phenomenon, which is, quite exciting. And so we've communicated all of this to Maine Coast Heritage Trust, and of course they're super interested in all of it. So it's one of the sort of lucky outcomes of this research.
And so
It's
that's
become,
go, Karen.
I was just going to say, it's become locally well known now for you go to Boothead to listen, to try and catch this sound and hear this sound, which I think is just reassurance that what we're doing is making a difference in getting people to consider the soundscape in their experience with natural environments.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I was
Nate.
just going to say that's what a sound mark is. A sound mark is that kind of listening experience that you can engage in a particular place. And it can be as sort of as wide and varied as you hear waves, you think of the ocean. So this gets back a little bit to the question about meaning making and what's there. Or it can be as really specific. And usually when you say a sound mark, it is specific like that. That's a sound mark of Boothead. You don't hear that everywhere. There's a very particular physical phenomenon that's going on there that generates this sound, and it's not all the time. You have to be there at the right point of the tide, and that's really similar to a cantor singing or a bell chiming, but this is actually just a geophonic phenomenon.
So one of the questions in the chat was, how do you imagine the soundscape being used for conservation of ecosystems, wildlife? And before I hand it over to you, it just reminded me of this, a quote from Tuning of the World by R. Murray Schafer, where he talks about the sounds of the birds. It's like, if you don't know the name of the bird, how will eventually you'll stop even caring about it. So knowing and identifying what you're listening to is an important part of that, of being connected to your to the life around you. And I know that you talked about these unidentifiable sounds, and you work quite closely with biologists, scientists, ecologists. So if you can just tell us a little bit about that collaboration or the way that you work with scientists in the field.
I would say we work with them after the field.
Right.
So we get stuff and we feel confident about a lot of it, and we feel less confident about a bunch of it. And so that's really the journey that sort of sends us back into people who are looking for the truth as opposed to looking for the experience. Steve can do a Cliff Notes version, hopefully, of the bugs that we record and what they are, right? They're these little things, and we found the guy who does this, by happenstance. We have some things that we've tried to share with scientists, and including the anomalous sound or whatever it's called on Bandcamp. Steve, I think the quote was, yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the ocean that we don't know what it is. And you know, I mean, then that's a legitimate response to something that nobody can identify.
Yeah. Yeah, because this is all really a relatively very new field, and yeah, I had been sending the anomalous sound clip around to to ocean, marine bioacousticians, and that's exactly, they're like, yeah, you know what, we don't know what most of this is. There's so much sound in there, and because it's all very much unstudied, and it's particularly difficult in the ocean. If you throw a hydrophone in without sending a diver with it, or a camera or something, you'll pick things up, and it'll be impossible to tell. So,
though even much like a microphone, you could pick stuff up and the diver wouldn't see it. So the contrast, and I think Karen mentioned earlier, between what you hear and what you see, these things are complementary. Not listening is not predicated on looking. One of our credos.
Exactly.
Well,
did that cover it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that we're over time, so thank you so much for just also bearing with us, and not an ideal way to present. I think I really encourage everyone on the call to really go check out their work on Bandcamp, and like take out some time to listen and listen deeply.
I just threw a link to. So we haven't really put together bugs with great audio and put them on the Bandcamp yet. But I did send a link to my pages that sort of explain the project, and have some examples that they're just mostly very, very short. So please feel free to check that out.
And just before we go, I want to say thanks to Ishida, thanks to Living Labs Institute, which, much like we're saying, go check out our stuff. I've had a brief opportunity to check out yours, and it seems like a great pursuit. And we're really, really pleased to share what little we know about this sort of newish field with you guys, and let us know if you have any questions. You can either do it through Ishida, or you can just reach out to us, but we'd love to hear back from you, perhaps in a longer conversation, if there's merit to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. Absolutely. I think the conversation will sort of continue here in Be There with one of the learning modules that we are offering in December. And I'll just quickly paste a link to this learning module, which is like a makeathon. So it's like a 4-day intense making workshop for which people are invited to be there. And the mode of learning would be listening. So a lot of the things that we spoke of today, soundscapes, sound marks. So I would encourage all of you to sort of go to the website and maybe check that out as well. And if you're interested in this stuff, write to us and maybe we can have a conversation.
Great.
It looks very exciting. Thank you for sharing that.
And also, after looking at your work, I think we also started making some field instruments, the basic contact mics.
Yes.
Sounds are like magical when you actually like try and
they are,
record
right?
them.
Yeah.
Yes. when you do a workshop like that, and the students put the headphones on, and they're just like, oh my God, yeah, right, yeah.
Absolutely.
Here's a professional tip: bike racks are wonderful instruments. Pair of drumsticks, bike rack, contact mic, and you're off and running.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
We'll try that. Yes.
They become playable.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And have a nice rest of your day. Thanks,
Yeah.
Karen.
Okay.
Thanks, Nate. Thanks, Steve.
Fantastic.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.